There are moments when you sit quietly, maybe late at night, maybe early in the morning, and you wonder why life seems to press harder on you than it does on others. You don't always say it out loud, but the question lives inside you. Why did things have to unfold this way? Why did doors close when you were finally brave enough to walk toward them? Why did you have to learn strength through loss, patience through delay, and faith through silence? If you're listening right now and something in your chest feels heavy but familiar, this message isn't random. It's meeting you exactly where you are. You didn't imagine the weight you've been carrying, and you weren't weak for feeling it. Some paths are quiet not because they're empty, but because they're sacred. Long before anyone saw your effort, long before people misunderstood your silence, a decision about you was already made. Not in the noise of this world, but beyond it. And while you kept moving forward without recognition, something far greater was unfolding in ways you couldn't see. There's a reason your journey never felt ordinary, a reason shortcuts never seemed to work for you, a reason you had to grow up emotionally before others even realized they were still asleep. You weren't being ignored, you were being shaped, and that shaping often happens in silence. If content like this speaks to you, take a second and support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. This is Deen and Discipline, a space for people who are walking through life thoughtfully, with faith, patience, and quiet strength. Being here already says something about you. You see, some people are chosen for ease and others are chosen for depth. Depth takes time, depth takes pressure, and depth almost always feels lonely while it's forming. When things slowed down in your life, when answers didn't come right away, when clarity felt delayed, it wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The kind that can't be rushed without breaking something important inside you. Think about the moments that hurt the most, the ones you rarely talk about, the times you felt unseen, underestimated, or quietly dismissed. Those moments weren't wasted. Each one refined your awareness. Each one trained your heart to see beyond appearances. While others learned confidence through applause, you learned it through endurance. There are people who move fast and burn out. And then there are people who move carefully because they're carrying something meaningful. You fall into the second category. That's why your progress never looked loud. That's why your growth wasn't obvious to everyone else. But what was happening inside you mattered far more than what people could measure on the outside. You may have noticed that life kept removing things from you before adding anything new. People drifted, plans collapsed, versions of yourself had to be let go. That wasn't loss, that was alignment. Not everything that feels good is good for where you're going, and not everything that leaves was meant to stay. There's also a reason you feel things deeply, why you sense shifts in energy before words are spoken, why certain situations never sat right with you, even when others said you were overthinking. You weren't overthinking, you were discerning. That awareness didn't come from nowhere. It was built through every moment you had to rely on inner clarity instead of external reassurance. While you were being quiet, something was being written. While you were waiting, something was being protected. And while you questioned your own pace, a greater timing was holding everything together. The delay wasn't denial, it was care. You don't need to compete for what's meant for you. What belongs to you isn't influenced by trends, pressure, or comparison. That's why rushing never felt right. Your life was never designed to move on someone else's clock, and deep down, you've always known that. There's a kind of strength that only forms when you're tested without explanation, when you keep showing up without applause, when you choose integrity even when no one is watching. That strength lives in you now, even if you don't always recognize it. You weren't being left behind. You were being trusted with something heavier, something more lasting. And the truth is, not everyone could carry what you're carrying without breaking. That's why your path looks the way it does. And if you've ever felt like giving up quietly, like stepping back from caring so much, understand this. The very sensitivity you tried to harden is the reason your soul is still intact. It's the reason you can feel purpose instead of emptiness. And it's the reason this message is resonating with you right now. This isn't the part where everything suddenly makes sense, but it is the part where you stop blaming yourself for the silence. You stop interpreting delay as failure, and you begin to see your life as something intentional, even when it felt confusing. There is more to this story, much more, and the next part matters. There's something important you need to understand about the silence you lived through. Silence doesn't mean nothing was happening. It means something was happening quietly, carefully, intentionally. While you were wondering why things weren't moving, why clarity felt delayed, why progress seemed invisible, layers were being added to you that most people never develop. Patience, discernment, emotional strength, the ability to stand alone without losing yourself. You weren't meant to grow fast. You were meant to grow deep, and deep roots don't announce themselves. They spread underground, unseen, holding everything steady long before anything rises above the surface. That's why your life may have felt heavy at times. You were being anchored. Think back to moments when you almost changed yourself just to fit in, when you considered lowering your standards, ignoring your intuition, or choosing comfort over truth. Somehow, something always stopped you. A hesitation, a quiet resistance. That wasn't fear. That was guidance. You were being protected from versions of life that looked appealing but would have cost you your integrity. You've probably noticed that people often misunderstood your calm. They mistook your restraint for weakness, your silence for indifference, your patience for lack of ambition. But you weren't passive. You were observant. You were learning how people move, how intentions reveal themselves over time, how truth always surfaces eventually. That awareness didn't come easily. It came through disappointment, through betrayal, through moments where you had to trust yourself even when no one else did. There's a reason you don't rush into things anymore. A reason you value peace over validation. A reason chaos drains you instead of exciting you. You've seen what happens when people chase quickly without grounding themselves. You've watched them burn bright and fade just as fast. That was never your assignment. Your assignment required steadiness. It required you to learn how to sit with discomfort without becoming bitter, how to wait without losing hope, how to remain kind without becoming naive. Those lessons don't arrive gently. They arrive through experiences that force you to mature before you're ready. You may have wondered why certain opportunities slipped away at the last moment, why things almost worked but didn't, why timing felt cruel instead of convenient. But timing isn't cruel when it's protective. Some doors close not because you're unworthy, but because you're meant for something that won't damage you in the long run. While you were waiting, your character was being tested. Not in ways that show up on resumes or social media, but in ways that shape who you become when no one is watching. How you treat people when you have nothing to gain. How you speak when you're hurt. How you respond when life feels unfair. Those moments mattered more than you realize. You weren't being delayed because you weren't ready. You were being delayed because what was coming needed you to be stable, not just excited. Strong, not just hopeful. Grounded, not just motivated. There's a difference between wanting something and being able to carry it without losing yourself. You've also likely felt isolated at times, even when surrounded by people. That kind of loneliness cuts deeper because it isn't about numbers. It's about connection. You outgrew certain conversations. Certain environments stopped nourishing you. Certain relationships couldn't follow you into the version of yourself you were becoming. That separation wasn't rejection, it was refinement. Not everyone who starts the journey with you is meant to finish it with you, and not everyone who leaves was meant to hurt you. Some exits happen because alignment has run its course. Holding on would have meant shrinking, and shrinking was never an option for you. You might not have realized it then, but every time you chose restraint over reaction, clarity over chaos, and patience over panic, you were strengthening something rare, an inner steadiness that doesn't rely on external approval. That steadiness is why you're still here, still reflective, still searching for meaning instead of distraction. And here's the part many people never see. While the world measures success by speed, visibility, and noise, your life has been shaped around timing, depth, and substance. What you're moving toward isn't fragile. It won't collapse under pressure because it was built slowly, intentionally, with care. You don't need to prove anything to anyone who couldn't see your struggle. You don't need to explain your pace to people who never carried your weight. Your path was never designed for comparison. It was designed for completion. There's still more unfolding, and what's coming will make sense of what didn't. There's a quiet truth most people never realize until much later in life. The things that didn't work out were not failures. They were filters. They removed what couldn't hold the weight of who you're becoming. At the time, it felt personal. It felt confusing. It felt unfair. But looking back, you can probably see how many situations would have cost you peace if they had stayed. You weren't spared because you were lucky. You were spared because you were needed whole. Some of the hardest moments you endured came from trusting people who couldn't meet you where you stood. You gave sincerity and received distance. You offered patience and met misunderstanding. That kind of disappointment changes a person. But instead of closing your heart completely, you learned how to protect it without hardening it. That balance is rare, and it didn't come easily. You may have felt invisible at times, overlooked, like your effort didn't matter. But invisibility has a strange gift. It teaches you who you are without applause. It forces you to listen inward instead of outward. It strips away the need to perform and replaces it with authenticity. That's where real strength forms. While others were distracted by noise, you were learning discernment. While others chased validation, you were developing self-respect. And while others moved quickly from one thing to the next, you were being taught how to stay present, how to sit with uncertainty, how to trust without seeing the full picture. That kind of inner work doesn't show up immediately, but it compounds, quietly, powerfully. There's also a reason you've always felt a pull toward meaning rather than surface-level success. Achievements alone never satisfied you. Recognition without purpose felt empty. You wanted your life to stand for something. To matter beyond numbers, beyond titles, beyond temporary wins. That desire didn't come from comparison. It came from calling. You're not here just to consume time. You're here to live with intention. And intention requires clarity. Clarity requires patience. And patience is almost always built through waiting. You might still be waiting right now. Waiting for direction. Waiting for confirmation. Waiting for things to finally align. And if that's the case, understand this. Waiting doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're being positioned. Some outcomes arrive quickly because they don't need much from you. Others take time because they require alignment, maturity, and stability. What you're moving toward belongs in the second category. You don't need to fear being misunderstood anymore. The people meant to recognize you will. The ones who don't were never supposed to. Your job was never to convince. It was to become. And becoming takes time. There will be moments ahead when things begin to open, not all at once but steadily. Quiet confirmations, subtle shifts, a sense that you're finally standing where you're supposed to be. When that happens, you'll realize why everything before had to unfold the way it did. The silence shaped you. The delays strengthened you, the confusion refined you, and the waiting prepared you. If you've stayed with this message until now, it's because something in you already knows this. You didn't need proof. You needed reassurance. You needed to be reminded that your path isn't broken. It's intentional. Before this video ends, take a moment and reflect. What is one season of your life that didn't make sense at the time, but protected you in ways you only understood later? Share that in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read right now. And if this message brought you even a small sense of clarity or calm, consider sharing it with someone who's been walking quietly through their own struggle. Sometimes people don't need advice. They just need to know they're not alone. In the next video, we'll talk about how to recognize the moment when waiting turns into movement, and how to step forward without fear when life finally begins to open. Stay close. There's more ahead. There comes a moment, often quietly, when you start to feel less restless about the future. Not because everything is clear, but because something inside you settles. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop forcing timelines. You stop questioning every pause. That shift doesn't happen because life suddenly becomes easy. It happens because you've grown into someone who can hold uncertainty without losing yourself. You begin to notice that your reactions are different now. Things that once triggered anxiety no longer pull you apart. Opinions don't shake you the way they used to. Delays don't feel like threats. They feel like space. Space to breathe. Space to choose wisely. Space to move with intention instead of impulse. This is where waiting changes its meaning. It stops being a burden and starts becoming a form of strength. You're no longer standing still. You're standing ready. What's ahead of you doesn't need urgency. It needs alignment. And alignment is quiet. It doesn't announce itself with pressure or panic. It arrives with a calm sense of rightness, the kind you feel in your body before your mind catches up. You'll know it when it happens, not because everything looks perfect, but because it feels steady. The noise fades, the confusion lifts, and for the first time in a long while, you won't feel like you're forcing your life to move. You'll feel like you're finally moving with it. Remember this. The version of you that struggled wasn't weak. That version was becoming. Every tear, every unanswered question, every lonely stretch of time was shaping your capacity to live with depth instead of haste, to choose peace over performance, to value truth over approval. You were never meant to arrive empty. You were meant to arrive prepared. And when life begins to open, even slowly, you'll recognize the difference. You won't cling. You won't rush. You'll meet opportunity with clarity, not desperation, with gratitude, not fear, because you'll know you didn't miss your moment. You were being readied for it. If you've made it to this point, pause for a second and notice how you feel. Not inspired in a loud way, but grounded, seen, a little more certain than before. That's not accidental, that's resonance. Before you go, if this message reflected something you've been living through, leave a comment and share what season you're in right now. Waiting, transition, renewal, naming it matters. It helps you own it. And if someone you care about has been walking quietly through confusion or delay, share this with them. Sometimes the right words at the right moment can ease a weight someone's been carrying alone. Stay connected with Deen and discipline. The next video will explore how to recognize when it's time to step forward and how to move without fear once the silence breaks. Until then, trust the pace you're on. Nothing meaningful about your life has been wasted, and nothing meant for you has been lost. Before you turn this off, let yourself stay with this feeling just a little longer. The calm you feel right now isn't accidental. It's what happens when something true finally lands without resistance. You don't need to rush back into noise. You don't need to scroll for distraction. Sit here for a moment and let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop. Let the pressure you've been carrying loosen, even if just a little. You've spent so much time being strong without being seen, so much time holding yourself together quietly, and yet here you are, still reflective, still open, still willing to believe that your life has meaning beyond what you can immediately prove. That alone says more about you than any achievement ever could. There will be days ahead that feel uncertain again. That's part of being human, but you won't face them the same way. You'll carry a deeper trust now, not blind optimism, not denial, but a grounded knowing that silence doesn't mean absence and waiting doesn't mean you're behind. When doubts return, remember this moment. Remember that you were able to sit with truth without fear. Remember that your life didn't fall apart when things slowed down. It refined, it clarified, it strengthened. You don't need to announce your growth. You don't need to explain your journey. The right people will feel it when they meet you. The right opportunities will align when you're meant to step into them, and the right timing will arrive without force. If this message met you where you are, let it continue working quietly inside you. Come back to it when you need grounding, and stay connected here. Deen and discipline exists for moments exactly like this, when clarity matters more than noise. Take one last breath before you go. You are not late, you are not lost, and you are not forgotten. You are becoming in the way that lasts.